Okay, this session is being recorded. It worked this time. I am making sure other things are closed. I will leave the mail up in case anyone, oh, and Leanne declined because she was with me the other day. I don't see anyone else that said that they were coming on the email. And I'm going to share the screen. Can you all see the screen right now? I'll assume an affirmative. I see most of you have muted yourselves. And you're not telling me, okay, thanks, Lenore, so that you can see it. So there was a lot of background time and energy that went into the development of this actual scale that we're using for our study in BC. I think some of you will remember that we had hoped to use the HCAT initially, and then as we tried to translate it into Portuguese for use in Brazil, we ran into a lot of trouble, ended up coming back and creating the scale we have now. So this presentation was done at the International Nurses Association for Clinical and Simulation Learning in Washington, D.C. in June, and it really helped to tie together the final version, the 35, that we will all be using for this next phase of the research actually in BC. So the conflicts of interest we all have to support ahead of time, and the good news, okay, so someone waiting for name is having trouble with the communication. Can you just tell me who you are waiting for name, because we don't know who you are. We know Eugene has joined. Maureen, is that you, or Colleen up at UBCO? We know someone else is here. We just don't know who you are. So what I had hoped to do at Anaxel, because the issue of instrument development is so key to the research we're trying to do in the scholarship of teaching and learning and simulation, we really had focused this presentation, which was a 40-minute podium presentation, to hit upon instrument development. And it really helped to go through all the background of what had to go into creating this. I think many of you know where we started with HCAT, how GITCS was developed. I think most of you on this call were part of it from the beginning, and you'll see I'll describe a little bit about the development and the expert panel and all that. But basically, you know that we're trying to assess and evaluate students' patient-centered communication. We know that there are definitely gaps in this area, and we had looked at those, and actually, as part of the 3rd edition of the simulation text, which is coming out, oh shucks, I'm sorry, I just closed that. That's coming out in September 28th. We did a chapter on communication tools that exist. So our goal, just as a reminder to this group, was we wanted something faculty could use to assess skills, provide feedback, and guide students in their provider-patient relationships. We wanted the instrument to be used for assessing and enhancing it, and we really believed that it could be interprofessional, so any health professional interacting with a client or patient, and globally as well. We wanted to create something that would be translatable in other environments and useful around the globe. So for this session, I just was reinforcing with them what you all know as part of the research we've done so far in the province about why communication is important, the power sharing component, the information sharing, that it can enhance trust, and it does rely on interdependence and using shared symbols, and we see in the literature that it improves when feedback is used. So I was hoping to give a beginning understanding of that. So this is part of Chapter 4 of the new SIM text that Natalia Ranjit Dari and I wrote. We took and looked at all of the other communication tools out there and kind of look to say, hey, can we use any of these in our BC research? Why are we starting from scratch? Why is that important? And as you'll notice, many of these were created for medical students, many in a clinic type environment, and not the breadth or depth of therapeutic communication that we all learned years ago in our early nurse training. So I did include HCAT in there as well, and some of the competency assessment tools for therapeutic communication that the cancer nurses use. I have to say that is an especially robust communication tool, and we ended up tweaking some of the items for our tool based on that. And I just wanted to be clear to people, because we know that communication also involves a lot of the miscommunication and adverse events in our healthcare system are related to patient handovers. And I just want to be clear. I think there was some confusion with people who showed up for my session when they saw interprofessional. I think they were thinking team training like the SBAR, iDraw, and Team Step. So I just acknowledge those do exist. They are good tools for assessing communication, but that wasn't the focus of this instrument that was developed. So if you remember, we had 44 items that we sat down together, gosh, a year ago, spring now. And the items were developed. Natalia and I sat and created them from these following categories or constructs: active listening, empathy, empowerment, and included both verbal and nonverbal communication, then rapport and trust building. Something that didn't come out in HCAT that we thought was important were barriers to communication, and some of those other tools we looked at included those. And then the cultural boundaries piece was getting at some of the global component of that. So you all were part of the expert panel who reviewed it. We pilot tested it, created those 3 professionally developed videos of good, poor, and mixed communication. And then we edited that scale and tweaked those 44 items down for clarity, wording, and the other thing that we spent a lot of time playing with was the descriptors. So I think you all know at that point that we were taking the tool out to have it the reliability and validity done, because we couldn't do our project in BC until we had a reliable and valid scale. And usually we were thinking we would do similar to HCAT and send it out interprofessionally and globally, and realized that, you know, that could be another 6 to 8 month procedure. And that's when we found out about the CSATS group in Seattle, who are crowdsourcing individuals, and we were able to get 887 views of the videos done within 2 weeks' time and have all the reliability and validity testing that we needed. So just as a reminder, we developed scripts that were based on the instrument for the video of a home care nurse visiting an older adult, a home visit, and it was based on Diane Major's chapter from the 2nd edition of the SIM text. We created 3 scenes, one with very good therapeutic communication, one with very poor and non-therapeutic communication, and then kind of a mixed variety that wasn't excellent but wasn't horrible. We validated those scripts by other expert nurses, did a rehearsal, recorded those films, created the 3 videos, and then worked with all of you to watch those videos using both the HCAT and the newly developed 45 items. So that's how it came about to that point in time. At that point, we sent the 3 videos and the scales to the CSATs, and they sent it out to a sample of crowdsourcers. These individuals didn't have medical expertise. They were asked just to rate the communication skills of the nurse actor in the videos. They were randomized as to which video they got, and they were allowed to watch another video if they wanted to. And basically, we used the ratings from them to do the psychometric reliability with the Cronbach's alpha and to see how the items in the scale fit in a confirmatory factor analysis. So you all know about the videos, and I just kind of talked through that aspect of it. And you know, basically, the videos we created were 5 to 7 minutes. There were 45 items for the scale on a 6-point Likert relationship from not applicable, never, rarely, sometimes, usually, always. And those of you who were involved in the early on know how we struggled with identifying those 5 factors. Of course, if they have a higher score, then it is more effective health communication. And we also did have an analog scale at the end from poor to good or best to worse. And part of the dialogue I'll have with you today is whether we want to change those words as well, because worse is kind of a judgmental factor. So just to give you, you know what, I want to stop there for a minute. You're all so nice and quiet, and I see you personally here, but are there any questions or comments up to this point in time as to what we did to get the scale where it is? Or do you want me to just continue and give you a snapshot of the statistics we got? Okay, I think if people could do thumbs up, they would. Yes, and CSATs was really interesting, Lenora. That was from Elsbeth McDougall. She had used them. The surgeons used them to evaluate surgical procedures and have done research with that, and that's how they help residents and surgeons improve their capability. Yay, Colleen's here. Hi, Colleen. I'm going through quickly, and you'll be able to watch the first 15 minutes of the recording to catch up about the history. But right now, I'm just talking about the results we got from crowdsourcing the 44 items with the 3 professionally developed videos. And here's the snapshot.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We had 592 unique crowd workers, so that means that many watched more than one video, but we had 887 assessments, excuse me, of videos submitted. And you can see there was a good distribution in the age of those who participated. The country, most of them were from the US, and I think that's partly because CSATs is located in Seattle in the US, and that's where they were able to get them from. And it's interesting that only 45 were healthcare workers, and I thought it was worth just breaking that down. You can see to the right of that the clinical domains of the 45 workers. And I think I can close that. I'm not sure if you were all seeing that. So the other piece is they are pretty highly educated as well. And the only thing I want to share as kind of a hindsight, we were really excited because we thought, with these crowdsourcers, it's actually like having a patient evaluate a nurse's communication behavior. So that's something. I think we did bring a few patients in and get their feedback on the scale, but it's an area I did not feel as strong on. And now with the results from this group, I'm feeling much better about that. So here's the really exciting news 6 to 8 months later. The factor held together beautifully. The 44 items all came together, and as Natalia and I talked, it would be good to get your input as well. We really think it represents therapeutic relationship. When you look at the 3 factors that came out, trust and rapport building, 23 of the items fit on that factor, 9 fit on power sharing, and 9 fit on empathy. We did exclude 2 items based on some of the expert opinions. So as well as the 800 plus people who viewed it, some of you were part of the 10 experts that viewed all 3 videos. And we had that, again, interprofessional. I think a few physicians and other folks, maybe PT or OT, also viewed them. So 10 people viewed the 3 videos, all 3, as experts. And we used those results to create intra-class correlation. And in that intra-class correlation, 2 of the items were excluded because they just were very random in how people ended up answering about them. And I'm happy to answer more of that if you have questions. So here, one of the other big barriers for me was finding a statistician, and Chris Richardson, who I acknowledged in the beginning, was amazing. He's over in CHES. He does measurement and instrument development. And of course, psychology at UBC just bought him out for 2 days, so I lost him. So I am once again in search of a statistician for the next level, and especially to help us with this project we're doing in BC. And I'm even thinking if I could get a postdoc in measurement, that might be helpful. So if any of you have hints, please send them forward. So the CSATs people did an initial rudimentary principal component analysis, and they gave us the intra-class correlations, and that was all really worthwhile. But Chris went and used another program I had not heard of, I think N+, and he really did much higher level analysis. So here you can see our good news is the Cronbach's alpha for the entire scale was 0.95. In my 25 years of instrument development, I have never had one come out that high. So that's really good news. And then when we added the 3 areas and 3 factors, the fit was even better with those empathy, trust, and rapport and power sharing. So we know that there are limitations. It was done all in English at this point in time, and the first time principal factor analysis was done using crowdsourced data. So we are ready to launch. I just have to check the fluid surveys, sending out the same 3 videos with the scale, 35 item scale. Again, internationally and interprofessionally, we have about 800 folks identified. I've been behind the scenes this summer with a work-learn student creating that email list, and we just need to get it sent out. That will be the second phase of reliability validity testing, but this phase is sufficient for us to go forward in BC with the 35 item scale at our individual schools to start testing it live, because up till now it has not been tested live, other than, at Douglas we did a pilot last spring, and that was a rudimentary testing to still help us tweak the 44 items. So just a reminder of the conclusions that, it was a web-based methodology we used. They were 3 professionally developed videos. All of us know that when we start using this scale on individual students, that it's going to be much different. But we feel strong, and there's the information about the intra-class coefficients. Thank you all who participated. I know it was an investment of time to watch all 3 videos and assess them that way. But we really think we're very excited about the outcome up to now, and I think our study in BC is going to really help demonstrate its feasible use in a variety of situations. And I think the implications you're pretty cognizant of. What I see very different about this scale is the patient-centered care mutual goal setting component. And that's a piece I'm really excited about, because we all talk that, but I'm not sure how good we've been at actually educating that way and then actually living it out. So here's the future research piece. I am in the process of creating this Train the Trainer module. I was in Brazil in February, and Natalia and I were working heavily on it, and we will get that up and running. Thayanthi, who some of you have met via email, is going to be my graduate assistant for the year. Kristen Trottier is on with me until the end of September to help launch that email version of the study. But the big study for us is this provincial one here, where we're going to actually start using it. I already have it being translated. You can see all the places of people that connected with us, and it is being used at the moment by Christy Dupert in Georgia with virtual sim. So I think that our ideas about where it will come from and where it will go are just beginning to be found. And of course, that's all the reference pieces. So insight, was that helpful? Thoughts, questions at this point?
Hi, it's Shirley. That's excellent. It sounds like there's some really good opportunities to use this. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the different classes that we've got going here at Vancouver Community College, where it would be really applicable to do this, because we've been teaching communications, collaborations, but we have never validated whether or not this is actually working. So I'm pretty excited about this. Good work.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. And can you all see the chat when people chat up? Eugene just said it would be very helpful. Or is that just going to me? And I realize I probably, okay, so people can see the chat as well. I'm realizing I had my dead space component up, and it might be worth taking a quick look, because this was where I would love to have a little bit of feedback. We created these basic instructions, and again, this was under duress. I had Christy in Georgia, who's been waiting for GITCS. Thank you, Colleen. Since, gosh, we told everybody, you all as well, December, we'll have it ready for December. And then it was, well, maybe May, well, hopefully September. So we wanted to create something for the virtual sim study that she was doing in Georgia. She got a small grant, I think the SPUNT grant from Enaxel. And I want to encourage us to consider that as well, because Enaxel is an international group. I sit on the editorial board for ClinSim and Nursing Journal, and I have access to some of the higher up folks just because I know them as individuals, and you know, they're happy to take a phone call. But they do have some good competitive monies for smaller studies. So we may decide after this one is complete that we want to do a next phase, and funding there could be very helpful. So in order to increase consistency and the Interrater reliability in use of the scale, and let me just see, I thought that I had pulled up the scale itself, but I have a sense that I didn't. So sorry, I think you're having to watch all my clicking through here. There's the instrument. Actually, I created a BC update. Here's the instrument. I know why, because I did pull it up. It's here. So I think it was Leanne who asked if we could get it to one page, because she said it would be really helpful for folks to be able to see it on one page and have all the things in front of them. And we created these descriptors for never, rarely, sometimes, usually, always. And I just want to explain the not applicable to. We have to realize all of us are going to be observing students in snippets of time. And not all of these behaviors are going to be expected. There might not, be time to redirect feedback or whatever, depending on the situation. So by using not applicable, we're not messing with the statistics of the scale. because if you put in a 0, then it comes up funky, and this way it'll just sort of keep it out, but it won't harm because you'll still divide the number of the scale. If you want an overall mean between 1 and 5, you'll divide only by the applicable questions. I hope that piece makes sense. But what I was hoping to describe in this never was you never see the behavior and you expect it for that interaction. Rarely is if it happens once but not again. That's the only way we could think of to describe that. And if it's something like an introduction, that's why I spent time explaining it there, that you only expect to happen once, then you would want to choose always rather than rarely, if that makes sense. Sometimes it happens more than once, but it isn't consistent. And the only thing we could come up with is, you know, if you expect them to do this action 5 times in the 5 minutes you're watching, and they only do it 2 out of the 5 times, it would be sometimes. If they do it 3 out of the 5 times, that would be, you know, more like most of the time. And then always is that they consistently do the behavior when and as it's expected. Do you have any questions about those descriptors or how you might use them within the scale as you're assessing students?
Hi, Suzanne. It's Colleen.
Hi.
Hello. I can see, just because that part is a little bit tricky, that I'm just interested now to see what the trainer sessions are going to be like, and it's not so much, you know, anybody can pick this up and just do it, you know, do this evaluation, which is fine, that there has to be, you know, a little bit of coaching or training, but I'm just thinking differently about how we might use it now. Thinking that it should be maybe myself who's doing the evaluations to keep it consistent across our different simulations or, you know, whatnot. So just more sharing my thoughts.
Okay, and that's really helpful, because as we're trying to consider, I mean, again, we started in a nutshell within our province saying, yes, it would be great to compare students at different levels and different schools. And we know some of our schools have actual courses or classes specific, others are integrating communication, and wouldn't it be interesting to find out? But the way that this has morphed is I have people internationally looking to use this. And we really do need to come up with a way to increase the consistency of how people are using it. That's why I think these descriptors are very important. And I think within each site, it is going to be important to work together to be congruous about how you're doing it. I'm even thinking more broadly, you know, my dream is eventually we'll have this on an app and clinical faculty will have it, and they'll just choose little snippets of time with students to do a quick assessment of their student at the clinical site in situ, and then use that as part of their evaluation and debriefing with students at the end of a clinical day. You know, that and what Chris did share with me was he thought the strength of these 35 items was so good that we may get it to a point where we have a short and a long form. So this would be the long form at 35 items, where you're in the sim lab and you're helping students learn how to do it and improve on what they're doing. But then you also have a short form of maybe 8 to 10, ideal questions that you use in the clinical site to do a snapshot picture of a moment in time. So, you know, back to your idea of, oh, I'll have to do it. I'm hoping that, and what I have found in my previous use of communication tools is when we got a group of 3 or 4 of us together, faculty, and watched a video and scored it together, and then discussed it afterwards, it helped us to clarify. And Colleen, you know what the biggest issue was? Individual perceptions. I remember watching a pediatric scenario that I thought the students had done fantastic in, because I'm an OB person and I know very little about that. And the pediatric faculty was the hardest. She graded them so hard and had such high expectations of them, and, you know, thought, oh, they just did horribly. And I thought, okay, this is where we need to reconnect as faculty and say, what level student are we assessing, what are our actual expectations, and what is the concrete feedback we can provide to students to help them improve, like, generically. You know, this is a foundational skill for healthcare professionals: communication with patients, mutual goal setting, building trust and rapport, being empathetic. How do we help all health professionals imbibe that? And I would venture to say it's not just with their patients, but with each other as well. We could get into the whole moral resilience piece. But, you know, that's my thought. So as far as a train the trainer, if we created an online resource using the 3 professionally developed videos, and having the scales present there and allowing people to go in, doing a little bit of a introduction, 5-10 minutes on what the scale is, what the intended use is, have them go through and score, and then kind of compare themselves to maybe the experts scoring of that same video. Would that be a helpful train the trainer, and try to keep the whole thing at about 30 minutes?
Yes. Suzanne, it's Lenora.
Uh-huh.
Hi, I added a couple things in the chat there.
Sure.
But just linked to online.
They
thinking
were
about Interrater reliability, so there might be an online way of establishing that, which would be great. I would feel good about that myself if I was using the tool.
Okay.
And then I also added in a short form. It would be very interesting to explore peer assessment as well, and a shorter tool could facilitate that. So I appreciate the online resources as well.
Okay, and so Interrater reliability for users, Lenora, what were you?
Yes, for educators who are using the tool to assess students. So as an educator, I know I'm reliable with administering the tool.
I know, and that's where you know, I think that's the piece that I'm having trouble envisioning exactly what that will look like. Because I can provide videos for them to practice on the tool. I mean, what I think those of us who have been involved in the tweaking and reshaping and clarifying language and everything have felt that the tool is pretty on target for what we're looking for. And the items describe pretty specifically the behaviors we want. And what you're doing as a rater is deciding if the student is doing that behavior effectively or not.
Yeah, and as someone who's newer to the tool, I think where I would probably start waffling around would be in the sometimes and usually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when there's that many items that you're looking for in a short period of time from beginning to end. So it might take some practice to get efficient with the tool, of course.
And as we were talking about that, Kim and Leanne and I, that, you know, that issue did come up, because then you're almost having to keep score. Like, how many times do I expect them to do something? And you might almost, let's see if we can choose one as an example. Encourages feedback, number 6. You know, every time they do it, if you put a little slash next to it, and if there was a time you expected them to do it and they didn't, and you put a little 0, then you could go through afterwards and count up, oh, they did it 3 out of the 5 times I expected it, so that would be usually. But will you have the time and ability to do it with this number of items all in one setting? Probably not. And that's where a short form could be really handy. So I do agree that that's
It's Colleen. Is there a chance, I mean, just at the few sites. I'm not sure how many people are involved at this point within BC, Suzanne, but it almost, to me, and I think maybe this is where Lenore is coming from, it almost feels like we want someone just to walk us through it as we're, trying it the first couple of times.
Yeah.
Like an in-person, even if you want to do a road show, or I mean, I know that's asking a lot, but I kind of see what she's saying. Or
and in honesty, that is what I was offering to do. I mean, even with the train the trainer, and if Kim were on, she could speak to this. Being at Douglas, we spent the afternoon there. Christine and Natalia and I, and ran through. She had phenomenal scenarios with standardized patients going on, and the students were in groups of 7 or 8, and even the students were using the tool to grade their peers, to assess their peers. And I'll be honest, when we started with HCAT, that's how we got 800 instruments for the reliability and validity testing. In every class, we were doing 19 scenarios between OB and PEDS, and we did them the first 10 minutes of class, and you'd have 4 students in the scenario and 35 to 40 observing. And so we had all the students observing fill out the communication tool, as well as doing another assessment and care planning tool. So that 15 minutes that the scenario was going on live, the students in the classroom were not checking their email and Facebook because they had homework to do. And by the time the last group of the term came up, their communication was phenomenal because they had just assessed 9 other groups on the communication tool. So, there definitely are ways, and I think I'm perfectly willing to do a road trip and come out with you the first time you're using it, because to me, and so I did pull up Colleen. So here's where right now it's happening at Douglas with you guys in the Okanagan, Arlene and Leanne at, and that's Stevens now, I think, instead of Jackson. In University of Fraser Valley are involved. Lisa's at Douglas as well. Eugene and her team at Langara. And then is Natalie with you, Natalie Murdoch?
She's not with me today, and I just sent her a quick email yesterday or on Friday asking, but I'm not sure.
Yep, but she's still interested in being part of it. And then we have Maureen out at UVic, and Sharon Wong at BCIT, and Antonella Jones at BCIT, and Arlie's at KPU, and Arlie just wasn't able to make it today. At UBC Vancouver, I've got Catherine Jackson, Kathy O'Flynn McGee, and Lynn Essen interested and involved, and we are just, and Lenora, I'm sorry, I skipped you there at the bottom of that page as part of UVic as well.
So you skipped me too, Suzanne.
Oh, Shirley, why aren't you on this list?
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you guys go through, this could be an earlier version. Did you guys go through the ethics review?
Yeah, we did.
All right. I'm sorry. That was not intentional.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but you all see now we have a nice spread for this study, and I think that that's going to be really helpful. But it's helpful for me to know what you need. You all received this research protocol with the basic background and the objectives. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that piece. And the pieces that I need to solve through, right now, this came up with Kim and Leanne last week as well, that we aren't sure exactly where we're going to collect and house the data. When we did the pilot at Douglas, we used all paper forms. It would be much easier if there was an online website that people could go to, and if there was one specific to each of your sites, so we could keep those all separate. And I think part of, I'm trying not to make this study seem bigger than what we said we were going to do, because really, Lenora's asking about more college partners. I actually have Ann Redmond from TWU who is wanting to be part of it. And, you know, the only hiccup is getting IRB, ethics approval. And so just as a reminder to this group, what our goal really was just to test the tool live to see, does it work from faculty's opinion, from students' opinion? Is it useful? Is it providing good feedback? And then doing a little bit of the reliability and validity statistics so we can see, does it differentiate between a beginning student and one ready to graduate? Does it differentiate from different schools for whatever reasons? And some people were talking about using it in clinical. Does it have a different application or use in a clinical site versus the simulated lab environment? Is it different based on high fidelity or other? Sorry, being distracted. Colleen, I agree. So yes, interested in more college partners if they want to, and we have everything set up so they can get through IRB. And the fluid survey is what I was thinking of using, because the survey we're sending out to the 800 plus for the reliability and validity testing with the 3 videos are connected to my fluid survey account. UVic has 5 college partners sharing the same curriculum. Okay, Lenora, I see what you're saying by that. And certainly if they wanted to be involved, that would be fine. At this point, gang, the instrument is ready to go. And similar to HCAT, all I'm asking is that if people are using it, they share the statistics so I can continue to build that. Within BC, Eugene, I know that they're talking about ending fluid survey, but they promised me, initially it was supposed to be this September, they promised me that they're going to have a reliable version in place. And I'm hopeful that our BC project will be completed by even December, if we can, maybe into March or April. But yes, I know, and that's a concern for me. I have to let it go. Because it seems like whenever we get something, we really just have to change some of the laws in BC related to some of this and where servers are housed, because they are incredibly confining compared to other places. But really, our simple research question to solve was this one, how people are using it. So that's what I guess I want to say. All right, Shirley, bye-bye. And I know we'll get cut off in 15 minutes anyhow. Good to have you here, and we'll follow up and find out why you're not on this list. But I believe that even if all of us are just, using it with 20 or 30 students in one practice application situation, that we will be able to have the statistics we need to demonstrate we've met the objectives for this study. Because really we were saying we wanted to get some baseline data, so whatever we do as beginning levels at our institutions would be possible. We want to compare and contrast how it's being used and whether it's providing good feedback, and if it's addressing the gaps in students' health communication skills. And then the reliability and validity testing of the scale itself will be ongoing. So what I didn't pull up were the notes. I thought I had here, our meeting from last week, that these were the things we were moving forward on. So Eugene, yes, good to work on the IRB renewals, and I can help with that if you need it. I'm working on the Train the Trainer website. And some of the things, this is what I wanted to highlight. Let me make that a little bit bigger. The information we were thinking we would need to collect at the sites to do some comparison data of how people were using it. So the level of student, the type of student, some of the sites, I guess Leanne and Kim have interprofessional students that interact with them as well, and they'd like to include them. And then identifying the location. Is it in the lab? Is it clinical? Are there other areas we're missing? Have something to identify school codes. And I think with that, Thayanthi will talk as well about the fluid survey and how we might match that to school codes. And then what level of simulation is being used, the modality, whether it's fidelity and what level of fidelity, or standardized patient or simulated patient, whatever people are using. And then I think it will be important to know the simulation itself, what its content and discipline was, because if it's communication focused, then the tool would be being used very differently. But the goal for this tool always was as a side along comparator, that the basic clinical evaluation checklist for the scenario should not be affected, but it could be used alongside with the communication checklist. And I know if you look at some of the other communication simulation evaluation tools, because there are broad ones to evaluate the whole simulation, communication is often included in there with 3 or 4 key items. And again, that may revert to what we're looking at as a short form down the road. But right now, I'm really excited about the 35 items that we have. I love that Natalia fit it on one page. We were going to change this to non-therapeutic and therapeutic from best and worst. I think she bolded the numbers so they would stand out a little bit more. And this little, GITCS rating scale was part of what we're doing for the BC study, just getting faculty's impression of how easy or hard it was to use, and then asking them for specific feedback. And of course, we're always open to people saying, this item makes no sense to me. I will tell you the 35 items that we kept, the one thing I didn't share with you because it seems a little bit overwhelming is this scale that we developed with all of the items. You'll notice the number of the items in this column here was the original number, whereas the new numbers are on that very far left-hand column, and then the concepts that the item fits to, power sharing, empathy, or trust and rapport building, is identified there. All of these items that we kept, 35, had excellent intra-class correlations. The options for intra-class are fair, good, and poor. And the majority of the ones we kept had excellent, and some we just kept because we really felt that they were important to the global component of this scale. So that's kind of all the information that I shared with you in the email, as well as the notes and minutes of how much we accomplished. It was kind of good to have Kim, Leanne, and I'm grateful because the web recording would have been much choppier than this one seems to have been. But I'd love to just open up for our last few minutes and make sure that I haven't missed any chats or any other questions or comments. Is everybody good? Oh, I didn't realize I could see what you all were seeing. That's good. Everyone's still here, and I'm hearing things pretty quiet. So just timeline planning now. Eugen, exact timeline for this research project. So if you look at the research protocol, that's one thing that we realize we're going to have to change is the timeline, because it's almost like, so we've got, that's all the pieces that have been done. This has been completed, though it's 2017 now and not 2018. So maybe what will be most helpful is, how about I work on this? The reality is we were hoping for July and August. Let's move this to 2017, that we'll do the instructors orientation and calibration workshop, and the data collection will now move September 2017 to March 2018. Does that make sense? And I will tweak this and share it around. But basically, we have the final. It's taken us till now, July of 2017, to get the final, but we have it. And it has been very hard won. And you know, we did do all the piloting that May of 2016 and everything. I think what I couldn't anticipate was how long the reliability and validity testing and data was going to take. And it's partly because we went the extra step and developed the videos, the professionally developed videos, and this higher level way of testing it. So that's why I feel so good about this instrument now that we can share together and use. And it will be really interesting to see how practical, and in all honesty, I will work with Dianthe. She's back next week to be in touch and set up visits with all of you. And I'm around until the 15th, but the 16th till about the 30th of September. I'm going to be in Johannesburg, South Africa, hopefully testing this with we have about 15 different global universities that are there, and we've got a whole simulation workshop day set up, and we're doing some other high and low fidelity comparisons, so I'm hopeful to use this as well. Timeline to plan, sounds good. That would be great. Woohoo, congrats. Okay. Everyone, I'm making the decision to end this recording. Now I just have to figure out how to download it and be able to share it with people, but I will do that. Thank you all so much for being partners in this. You can tell how excited I am. Just as an aside, if you want to put on your calendars, our next SUN workshop, Simulation User Network workshop, and Shirley was on this call. Lenora, I'm not sure if you were there last week as well, is going to be in Prince George. And I actually met a couple out here in Blaine this weekend that I told I was going to Prince George. That's where they were from. And they were like, oh, come stay at our house. They're 20 minutes away from UNBC. And I don't know that we've had UNBC partners as well. So please do reach out to colleagues who you think might be interested. The instrument is good to go now. We can help people write up the ethics, and the more data we have within BC, the stronger our final project will be. And I want to assure you all that as we start working on the BC project, you are all co-investigators, and we will be writing this up together and moving it forward from there. But remember that a year and a half ago, we thought we were going to be using HCAT for this study. And that is why we got sidetracked this way, because that wasn't feasible. And I think we're ending up with a much better opportunity. So thank you all. Good luck to the start of your term. Thanks for connecting with Leela, Lenora. I didn't reach out, and have to say that when I lost Christine in December, things fell by the wayside. But being on administrative leave, this has my undivided attention, and I'm really excited about that. And looking at the final proofs of the book, you're going to love it. I think I sent you all the promo code in the notes that I had, but if you didn't or you have questions, let me know. Thanks all. I'm going to end us for